Welcome to Zen Live TV. This is the Alien Scientist Science and Controversy Hour. I'm your host, Jeremy, the Alien Scientist Riss. My YouTube channel is Alien Scientist. I have a bachelor's degree in physics and been studying a lot of different conspiracies and stuff for the past 8 years since I first read Behold a Pale Horse and started looking into 9/11 conspiracy and also Roswell and a bunch of other incidents, for those of you who don't know me. I'm not a climatologist, but I do have a lot of experience with mathematical modeling and building mathematical models of complex systems. I think weather is probably one of the most complex systems you could ever imagine to mathematically model. It's got a lot of different dynamic variables and a lot of different problems with the models. I've got some pictures here to go with the slides of what I'm going to talk about today. Today I'm going to talk mainly about geoengineering, and we're going to talk a little bit about global warming, there's a debate about whether it's man-made or not, and we'll talk about some of the evidence for both sides and some of the positions on both sides of that. Not really get super detailed into that because again, that could take hours and maybe even months to if you really wanted to drag it out, all the little technical difficulties. And it is such a complex and difficult and dynamic system to model that I really, my position I've always taken on that is that we need more dynamic models, we need better modeling, we need better monitoring and data collection devices, and more funding in science definitely needs to go into understanding the weather and understanding the climate and the atmosphere of our planet, and a lot of other things. And then also I think that information needs to be kept open source, because that will avoid what happened with the ClimateGate scandal and a lot of other issues. I think all that data needs to be completely open sourced to the world, and that's the only way that it would function and not be able to be accused. There would be no accusation of manipulation or skewing the data. There would be, just more monitoring stations all over the world is what I advocate. Lots of them, open source data and open source monitoring of all that, and have the system just as open source as possible. That way there's none of these discrepancy over who's controlling the data, whether they're manipulating it or lying about it, and all the controversies that have arisen in that debate. I think that overall understanding the climate and weather of our planet is key and essential. I have a slide here. It's called Kardashev, I believe. The Kardashev scale is a ranking of civilizations, and one of type 1, it says type 1 Kardashev scale. So basically, if you look on type 1 of a Kardashev scale, which is basically my alien scientist mission statement, is to assist humanity with the technologies needed to make our step to a type 1 civilization, and how we'll be prevented from going to a type 1 civilization by say if the world turns into a complete police state or a total tyranny or a dictatorship or this sort of one world government, the new world order that a lot of people out there talk about and envision. The world's definitely changing. It's not going to stay the same. It's definitely changing a lot right now, and there's a lot of people scared about that. A lot of people not really sure about what position they want to take in that. I'm a member of the Venus Project. I've talked about them a lot, and I'm going to be getting more involved with them in the future, making videos for their technology segment and stuff. So my whole thing is I'm really interested in just promoting advancement of humanity and the merging of our culture with a spacefaring civilization, so that we can actually go out there into space and maybe make contact with aliens. Because right now there's a lot of conspiracy theories that they're here visiting, a lot of evidence that they might be here visiting us right now, and that they just don't want to make contact with us yet because we're not advanced enough. We haven't yet matured to that level. And these are the steps we need to take. If you look up type 1 civilization on this Kardashev scale, those are the steps that we need to take if we want to be taken seriously in the macrosphere universe of things, if we want to be recognized by intelligent species out there, which of course would have the technologies to hide themselves from all of our primitive probes and sensors that we're currently using through SETI and other programs to look for them. But anyways, a type 1 civilization, one of the things that's essential to this type 1 civilization is controlling the weather and using adaptive atmospheric manipulation. Whatever that may be, however that technology may work in the future, whether it's independent weather stations or the current experimental programs that we will talk about that have gone on with the U.S. government and military in general for weather modification techniques and cloud seeding, a lot of other different methods that have been explored and definitely done. This is documented stuff. This isn't this part of it isn't conspiracy theory. The conspiracy theory regarding chemtrails is that the government is doing it to us all the time, every day. That every single one of these contrails you see in the sky and all these planes overhead are all spraying this stuff down on us constantly, and that it's the government planning to poison us, or they want to do this for population control, or to cause disease and reproductive harm, or whatever the case may be. These arguments. Those are the conspiracy theories, I would say, because they don't really have a substantial proof between, but you can't link up every single contrail in the sky and be like, those are all chemtrails and it's this massive conspiracy. Just because you have, what we have is documentation that what we can prove is that they were having these programs, that they did do spraying, they did do technological manipulation and weather control technology, and there may be a large-scale spraying program taking place right now that is, and if there is, I want to talk about what it's related to. I do not think it's about poisoning us. If there is one, I would say it's related to geoengineering and maybe even covering up for global warming and climate change. And because that's the only way I can see. When I look when I investigate conspiracies, I sort of have I take a scientific approach mainly to anything that I investigate. And the scientific approach is really that you don't take anything as fact. You don't take anything as this is ultimate truth. You always take every little bit of information that you come across as a suggestion. You never hold too much faith in one thing, because you can easily be misled in those directions. And everyone that sort of makes a new documentary or releases new information regarding anything related to this is usually a trailblazer, and you're blazing into uncharted territory that you don't really have all the information, and you make a lot of mistakes. I made a lot of mistakes when I first started getting into a lot of these different conspiracies and stuff when I first began, that I later realized were mistakes, because you get led down a wrong trail, and the only way you can prevent being misled and tricked by disinformation or other things is, I believe, through the scientific method and through really testing your beliefs all the time and saying, well, I'm not going to take that anything is to be ultimate truth. I'm always going to be open to new information and be hungry for new information. Don't just be confident in your beliefs. Be hungry to prove them and hungry to go out and get more information, because that's how you're going to win this information war in a battle. So if you believe in chemtrails that strongly, I'm going to give you some of the things in today's episode that will allow you to collect scientific data, organize it, and then accumulate it in a method that would be effective at proving your case. And we'll talk about that. And the sort of the title I put up here is what, why, how, and who the hell is spraying. Sort of a jab at the that documentary, what in the hell are they spraying, which sort of mixed up a lot of disinformation about the idea that they're doing this massive spraying program just to poison us all the time, not taking into account the obvious fact that they're breathing it in too. The elites or whoever else, the military and their families and everyone else is breathing it in too. Why would they, that makes no sense. If they're doing spraying, I believe it's related to geoengineering, and we're going to talk about a little bit about those types of systems, the technology that sort of went into that, and sort of what they've experimented with and what they know, and also really important, the science of contrail formation, and how to tell that not everything not everything you're seeing in the sky, regardless of what it may appear or how it may stay around longer than anything else. It's not related to whether or not it's a chemtrail or a natural contrail. It's related to atmospheric weather conditions. So we're gonna first off, there's a picture of this windcraft and these windmills, and it's during a really foggy day with low-lying condensation. And you can see that the windmill creates enough of a vortex, enough of a low pressure or high pressure zone behind that. It would be a low pressure zone behind that turbine, that it actually causes the vapor in the air to condense and come out of the air. So you see these what look like contrails, or almost basically coming out of the wind from blowing across the vortices that are created in the wake of these turbines. So there's a lot of interesting phenomenon with when you deal with saturated air, where you have water vapor, lots of gaseous water, like water in its gas phase, in air, and then it suddenly reaches that critical point where it turns to liquid phase. from gas phase to liquid phase. You sort of lower the pressure enough, and you hit this critical phase, and that's based on ideal gas law and expansion of things, and also what that does, what the pressure and volume does to the temperature of the thing, and then the temperature affects, of course, its physical phase, its chemical phase, it's whether it's a solid, liquid, or gas. So as the temperature drops or the pressure decreases rapidly, you would get instant cooling off, and it would naturally freeze up. So and turn from liquid gas in the air into it turned from water vapor gas in the air into a liquid water, which would then accumulate, which is what you see as these visible clouds. And those also sometimes attach to particulates, or like dust, or small little tiny pieces of whatever in the air to form clouds and other things. That's when it starts to stick around, because cloud formation, whether it persists or not, is also a function of how much just dust or debris is naturally up in the air, like from smoke or fires that blow lots of debris and other chemicals, fine particles, into the atmosphere. Aerosols, they're called aerosols. Like an aerosol can, it's just aerosol just means it's soluble in air. So anyways, there's another graph here which I think is really important. It's altitude versus temperature. It's called contrail formation, and it's a graph. This is a black and white picture, if you want to bring that one up for me. And this shows when there's always contrails and never contrails, and the difference of when you see them and when you don't, according to their data. They took a bunch of their own data and just guessing, and then it's they show standard atmosphere, a little bit atmospheric pressure. So as atmospheric pressure changes, the contrail formation changes too. So those lines shift slightly, for when there's never contrails or always contrails. So that's what those standard atmosphere, 100% relative humidity. That's what RH stands for. 60% relative humidity, 40% and 0% relative humidity. So the relative humidity is important for whether you see a contrail or not in regular atmosphere. So I thought this is an interesting graph. It's just altitude versus temperature, and when I was thinking of how I'd model this and what it would be a function of, I thought it would be like probably pressure, pressure or humidity. But altitude apparently is humidity's in here. It's those lines being shifted. But altitude is apparently a substitute for pressure, because they just altitude, yeah, similar. It's similar to pressure, but I don't know. This is an interesting graph, because as you go up in altitude, you also drop in temperature as you reach the upper atmosphere, which is an interesting fact, because you get more contrails in the upper atmosphere as you drop in temperature. There's always contrails, so it's kind of an interesting thing. And what I did when I first started hearing about these contrails and this whole conspiracy theory about chemtrails and stuff back, I lived in Revere at the time and near Logan Airport, and I started going out and taking my own data. I was just write down what was the humidity for that day, what was the temperature, and I'd go outside and I'd write down just a check mark or whether I could see contrails or not. And since I was right near Logan Airport, there was always plane traffic going in and out of there all the time. So I got to really map out whether I could see contrails or not. Although I didn't really have the equipment to map out altitude. You need some special surveying equipment in order to really determine the altitude of clouds. It can be very deceiving and hard to determine just how high clouds are. And a lot of these pictures that you see of these contrails and whatnot do show. They'll show like one cloud and they'll say like, why is this like a persisting contrail and this one not? Well, those could be two different atmospheres, completely different. So you don't know unless you have hard data on those things and can argue that. Like, you can't just guess and be like, well, this looks like a chemtrail because it stays around longer and therefore it must be a chemtrail. And you really need to be scientific about these things and not like just jump into gullibility of everything I see is a contrail or a chemtrail or whatever, as I see so many people doing that. Maybe they are spraying things. We know that there's documentation. We have the documentation here. I don't know if you showed those slides. Military weather mod, weather mod history from the here. Let's bring that one up. weather history of Air Force weather modification right here from one of their slides. It's a little bit blurry, the picture I sent, but I'll have to get the original. I'll link to it. But World War II, they started trying to do seeding. It's basically like, I mean, this started back with when they first had airplanes, and they realized, oh, they leave these trails in the sky when they fly from the exhaust trail, and hey, maybe we could, like, it's almost like it's leaving clouds in the sky, and sometimes when we leave them, you know, they probably noticed that they left persisted, or sometimes when they left a contrail, it was like a seed that set up a for more clouds to form off of it. So basically, it started a whole cloud formation because of the contrails. So they probably quickly, early on, realized that there was sort of some effect that they were having on the atmosphere and things going on in the sky, based on the chemicals and stuff that we're, you know, pumping into it. Whether that be also skywriting technology. They had skywriting technology. They used to have skywriting back in the 20s and stuff. It can be traced back to. And that's just what they used a type of oil. It was I think Chevron oil that they would inject into the exhaust manifolds, and it would heat up and basically form this white smoke. So they used to do skywriting back in like the 20s even, and I'm sure back then they realized they could, you know, do things with clouds, and they even had scientists probably think, oh, well, if you put this into a cloud, things like silver nitrate or other compounds into clouds, you can get them to do different things. So there was a lot of interesting early on documentation. This is all a lot of documented stuff about them spraying stuff into the sky, and to do weather modification and various chemicals and stuff. So you can look this up. This is documented stuff. I mean, that happens, but that doesn't mean that every single contrail in the sky you see is that them doing this. You don't know that, and it's ridiculous to you almost discredit the whole information about the government doing these types of things by making all these ridiculous claims, like all these planes are having them and that they're putting it in the gas at airports and doing it on purpose to spray use all commercial flights to lay down a thick aerosol base to basically disrupt the entire atmosphere, to cause increased global cooling through the shading effect, through reflecting sunlight away from the Earth, to bring down the global temperature through more contrails. And there's other people who argue that back 30 or 40 years ago, you didn't have as many contrails as you do today, and I would argue that there's a lot more flight traffic these days. There's way more planes and way more flights per day. If you look up how many flights per day were back in the 70s versus how many flights there are per day now, and the number of airports has increased too. So it's really interesting. If you map out a lot of these places, that these really heavy areas that you see. I think I have on the map. You can bring this one up. It's called Coblen Flight Pattern or something. It's a map of the United States, and it's got like all these lines, which are basically the flight traffic lines from the FAA. I have a couple pictures like that. But anyways, you see that these are just heavy traffic areas, and a lot of times, if someone lives in one of those areas, which is under a place where a lot of planes go overhead through one of these FAA flight traffic lanes overhead, then they're going to see a lot more of these things than other people. And if they're putting up pictures on the internet every day, it's being like, look, I see these things all the time, this is crazy, and it's a big conspiracy. It's like, maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but you need better data, you need better proof to show that what that is. You know, like one thing is rain test, water testing. You can just buy one of those heavy metal water test kits from I think you probably get them at Home Depot or Lowe's or something, and test your rainwater and see if it has contaminants like strontium or barium or these things that they're alleging are putting in. See if it is, you know, prove whether it is or not, and really, you know, do it scientifically. Don't just don't just allege that everything you see is this. And you know, you can take hard scientific data. Start an Excel spreadsheet file today. You know, July 5th. We're here July 5th, 2014. Write down, it's a clear, beautiful blue sky day out right now. I wish I was out enjoying it, but, you know, I got to get information out to people. But anyways, you write down start with today, you know, say, hey, what's the temperature and relative humidity and look out today, you don't see any contrails. All right, take that as a data point, and then check every single day. You know, mark when you see these things. Take note of what the temperature or the relative humidity is. Take note of these things. See if there's a change. Where I live right now, I'm in a flight path right to Logan Airport. I see commercial flights go over my house all the time, and then a couple like right where I used to live, there used to be a spot where all the flights would come and turn around, and you'd see them coming really low. Um, and they're just doing their landing approach, and they go around and do these huge arcs in a big loop for miles in order to do these landing arcs. And then you get, you know, these pictures of these contrails which go in these circles, and they're like, why are they dropping the chemtrail? Obviously it's a chemtrail because they did it in a circle. They're spraying stuff in the sky on purpose. Or the grid lines, that's another thing that they say. Look at this tic-tac-toe grid. Look at that tic-tac-toe grid. It has to be chemtrails because it's in the shape of a tic-tac-toe or an X. Well, there's not very. I mean, what's the chances that two planes would just cross paths and leave contrails, you know, crossing paths? I mean, that's not a good scientific argument there. You know, that's something that you would get called out on very easily. So that's the sort of position I take overall on a lot of these things. I try to approach this in a very scientific and rational, as rational as you can be when you're dealing with some of the things. I mean, I get people calling me a shill and saying that I'm a government agent because I don't believe that everything out there is a chemtrail being sprayed by the government so they can poison our water supply and kill us all and give us brain damage and all these things. So I think that that's rather interesting sometimes. My explanation for the grids and the X's, yeah, of course, that's easy enough. But the grid patterns and the lateral lines, how they're parallel, sometimes you get parallel lines in the sky. Well, obviously, if it's a traffic lane and you're flying at cruising altitude, 30,000 feet, and you're not going to want to fly directly in the last guy's contrail or maybe above it or below it, and you're going to want to stay a little bit away from it. So you probably want to stay right at the perfect optimum height. That's where you don't. There's an optimum cruising altitude that they've gone and calculated with the air density and the amount of engine lift that you have to do. That's why they fly at that height. It's like an optimum height. It's above all the other air traffic. So they all try to fly at this really relatively 30,000 feet. And what happens is you're flying in a plane and there's a contrail right there. I mean, you can see this thing too. You're not going to want to fly in the wake of that and just overlap these things. You're going to want to like fly a little bit to the side of it. So what happens is you leave these parallel lines in the sky as the pilots go by. You're not going to want to fly in the other guy's wake and directly go in his contrail. All the turbulence that you would hit and then clouds and stuff. I mean, the plane would be rocking. You're not going to do that with a commercial flight. So, and then if you have two of these heavy traffic lanes, say it's one of these places on the map that you can find where there's these two places where there's a lot of plane traffic, and you have that same thing happening where each pilot's just trying to, you know, move the line. You're going to get a grid it's going to look like a grid. It's going to happen like grid. And sometimes what happens with that is that relative humidity in a grid pattern will stay in the sky. As the other are more diffuse because they're out here. They're easier to get to, so they'll diffuse first, and then the grid-like part will be the last to diffuse, so that sometimes you'll catch it where there'll just be a little grid-like, and it looks like they just sprayed it in little lines to make a tic-tac-toe grid or something. And that could be a tic-tac-toe grid. It would be much more convincing if you had like footage of the planes actually going and spraying and, you know, shooting the dust out and doing it in that pattern in the full thing. But a lot of times they don't. They just have like a couple out-of-context photographs or you know, photographs of these things. But anyways, we're gonna take a quick break, and then I'm gonna get a couple other people to call into Skype into the show, and I'm gonna get my first guest on coming back. So run commercials real quick, and we'll be right back.
Are you sick and tired of being sick and tired?
Yes.
Does the stress of daily life seem just like too much?
Yes.
Are you simply fed up?
Yes.
Do you wish you could just make it all chill out?
But how?
Well, then you need a Royale grinder. Royal Grinder is a jumbo-sized 2.5-inch diameter premium 4-piece herb grinder that fits in the palm of your hand. With 50 closely interlined, everlasting chunky teeth that will keep on shredding whatever enters your chamber.
I can use it for all my herbs. Thanks, Royal Grinder. I'll never feel shitty again.
Order now at www.royalgrinders.com. That's www.royalgrinders.com.
Are you a smoker and you need to quit, but you're discouraged cause it's harder than some like doing me? Are you a non-smoker but you like to do the tricks? Well, these are non-toxic clouds that exit your lips. Oh yeah! Yeah! White Plains Vapors, located at 210 Mamaroneck Avenue in White Plains, New York. Visit our location and choose from a wide selection of exotic flavors.
Hello.
We back?
Yes, we are.
All right, thank you. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and bring my first guest on to sort of talk about some of these things a little bit more. I sort of basically gave my rundown of my whole approach to things. You have to be skeptical of all the information that you're coming across out there. You have to sort of take a skeptical and a scientific approach to this. Look at what evidence that you do have, and also within conspiracies. Generally, I have a slide here I'd like to bring up. My approach to conspiracy is, number one, I look for funding. And I say follow the money. If they're paying for all this money to build these aerosols, these superfine particles and other things to spray into the atmosphere, who's paying for it and why are they paying for it? And global warming makes the most sense because you have all these oil industries that are trying to cover up global warming and the evidence for it, and they've been caught spending billions. The Sierra report, all these other people have caught them, financing a lot of these global warming skeptics societies and disinformation panels and a lot of other stuff to sort of really skew the information and really poison the idea politically in a lot of people's minds. And the evidence of that is quite clear because, you don't know whether we're causing global warming or not. I'm not going to say I'm an advocate and say, yeah, global warming is definitely real and I believe everything in Al Gore's book. That's not what I'm saying. That's the way people attack me when I say that I don't agree with global warming skeptics. When I say, like, we need to be scientific about this. We need to take accurate data. We need to build accurate models. That's what scientists do. That's what I would do if I was put in charge of this, if I was a weather or climatologist. Look at climate models. Look at our climate models now, and if you have a problem with them, then help make them better. Help. Don't just say that, all of them are wrong. There's a lot of people that have written things saying that climate model fails. Climate model failed. Bring up that one. These guys made a climate inputs, the highly complex, highly chaotic system, and this was from a book, Useless Arithmetic: Why Environmental Scientists Can't Predict the Future, by a couple scientists. And their basic thing was, we can't predict weather; it's too chaotic, and there's just too much involved that modeling it becomes impossible, and virtually, maybe it becomes impossible, but that's just I view that as a giving up approach. That's just they can't understand it in terms of these things. But I say that's giving up. That's not building a proper model at all. And the best way to do it would be to have better monitoring of all these inputs, and then find out more dynamic ways in which they interact, and learn more as much about them as possible. I don't think that I think it's a cop-out to just say it's too complex, we'll never understand it, and or that your models are just wrong because I don't understand the science that goes into them. Basically, the science for CO2 and being a greenhouse gas, us emitting trillions of tons of it into the atmosphere daily. It's really ridiculous not to think. I mean, we burn 55 million. Look at global oil consumption is 55 million barrels a day, and then consider that 55 gallons in a barrel. 1 gallon of gasoline probably turns into 700. I think it turns into 720 gallons because it expands volumetrically. 1 gallon of gasoline, when you combust it, it creates literally 720 gallons of CO2 gas. So when you multiply it all out, there's trillions of gallons, not tons. I'm sorry, I said tons. That was incorrect. That was incorrect. It was gallons. So if it comes out to like 2.3 trillion gallons of CO2 gas that we're putting into the atmosphere daily. It's a greenhouse gas. It's like a blanket basically. It reflects. It's proven, so the solar effects, the incoming radiation, it reflects and keeps it in. So you have all these things that go into building these models, and that's one of them. And to just say that, oh well, it's negligent, or cows produce a lot of methane, so it's burning gas isn't really polluting the atmosphere that bad. It's not really that big of a problem. We can just continue to burn fossil fuels forever at a never-ending rate, and it will never have any problems. We'll never really fuck up the earth by doing that in any way, which is weird because a lot of the plants that worked for millions and millions of years to take all that CO2 out of our atmosphere and turn it into plant matter, which then broke down and created the fossil fuels that we're now pumping out of the ground, burning and putting that CO2 back into the air. It's sort of reverting our planet back to what the climate was here on Earth many millions of years ago, before the plants over millions of years filtered all that other gases out of our atmosphere. So it's really hard to say for sure how much it's going to be, and then the climate scientists who make predictions are always accused of going overboard with their predictions, and it's really a complex thing to be studied. But I really think that the answer needs to come from science and more. So I don't know. I'm gonna try and bring this guest on right now and see if I can add to group call. So this is our first call-in guest, and if you want to call into the show, you can contact me on Skype or our producer, and we'll bring you on. We'd be happy to. So, but anyways, while we wait for him to answer, back what I was saying about climate models, I really think that I don't take a position on whether we're causing it or not. I think there's a lot of arguments on either side to say that we're really, it looks like we're causing it. It looks like that we are having an effect on our atmosphere. But again, it's like, how much of an effect are we really having? Is it realistic? Are these predictions, over exaggerated, or are they accumulated? Or, are we in serious trouble, or are we not? That's what a lot of people want to know, I think. But anyways, here's our guest. Welcome. I don't think we can hear him yet. Check your audio settings in Skype real quick. But anyways, yeah, modeling is something that I have experience with it as a scientist. As a physicist, I've done modeling. A good deal of modeling. Nothing really as complex as a full climate model of the entire Earth, but I've done some basic modeling of science systems. So that's sort of my experience with what I bring to the table in it. I'm not exactly a climate scientist, but I don't try to argue on either side of the opinion. I'm just saying that we need more data. We need better scientists looking at this. We need an open source system of collection, and he's still not having. We still can't get his audio through. You don't have another mic, do you? Well, I'm sorry. We're gonna have to drop you until you can get that mic fixed. Just call your Skype line and fix those audio problems, and we'll bring you. And just text me if you get it fixed, and we'll bring you back on. Sorry about that. If anyone else is interested in contacting us or bringing us only through the computer, thanks. Okay, so yeah, he can't. He can't get through to us. Anyways, yeah. So basically, there is a history of weather modification and cloud seeding technology. They used it in Vietnam to seed fly over typhoons and stuff and seed them to make them more powerful. Put things in the clouds like they can actually salt crystals will cause the clouds to actually dissipate. If you throw salt into the clouds, what happens is that the molecules form on the salt and they turn to raindrops, and will actually bring the cloud. It will cause the clouds to come out of the sky and condense and different things that can happen. There's also the silver will cause crystals or ice formation, so you can create like bigger winter storms. And then I also want to talk a little bit about HAARP as well, because it's in fact related to some of the weather control experimentation technology that they have, or what's been going on out there. I don't know how effective ionospheric heating really is on all weather systems. It does have some effect, but mostly the ionospheric weather control and HAARP, that stuff's mostly related to signals transmission for over the horizon radar systems and the upper ionospheric weather systems, because those control transmission signal quality. So it's basically about creating these artificial storms in the upper atmosphere which interrupt signals and communications relays. That's really what I explained that in my video on HAARP, about why there's so much secrecy, why it's this Air Force big deal secret system. It's because they're using it for counter communications. It's to interrupt and create these ionospheric storms in the upper atmosphere, so that over the horizon communications, if you're trying to send something over the horizon, you have to bounce the signal off the ionosphere and to them. That's basically the only way you can send signals over the horizon. And there's only certain frequencies that will work with. And if you interrupt the upper ionosphere and send all kinds of static and crap up there on those frequencies, that when they send their frequencies up and try to bounce them off, they get all jammed up, and all they can hear on the other end is just static and garbage, because that's what's up there. So that's basically the idea of how HAARP works in the upper atmosphere weathers. They can cause a little bit of heating in the ionosphere, just heating the upper atmosphere slightly, which could dissipate, or it could cause cloud dissipation. I think what is it according to that graph? So if you heat it up, it's never contrails. So that would dissipate the contrails. So that if they could heat things up with HAARP potentially and use it to dissipate clouds or contrails in the atmosphere, but only in the upper atmosphere. So that would be like really high cirrus clouds, or yeah. So and stratus clouds. So anyways. I want to see if we can get another guest on or not, but we're gonna try and bring him on. I already answered his question. Okay, well, I'm sure you have more. I'll get you on. I'm gonna try and get him on one more time, and if that fails, then so anyways, yeah, I'm trying to encourage more people, because I've debated with a lot of people online over this subject, and I may have to do another questions and answer thing ahead of time next week. If this gets enough reviews, I may do another follow-up segment on this topic, just to answer more people's questions, because this has caused quite a bit of controversy when I've taken positions on this with my views on it. All right, can we hear you now? No. Hey, is there anything that they need to do to unmute his mic on your end, producer? I don't know, but do you need to call him personally or add him to the call? Or
no, if it was coming in, we would hear him.
Oh, we got it.
We got it.
Good.
It just went out.
Yeah, you can hear me?
I can hear you now.
Perfect. Okay.
Okay, man. What's your question?
Well, part of it you already answered concerning HAARP. I was very curious. I'm very on the fence about this stuff, because it's a bit messy of a topic, and it really lacks the attention of something like 9/11 or any of the other aspects, and very little fact. but in general, through people like, I don't know if you're familiar with Dutch synths, but through people like him, you start to grow a little weary of the connection between the chemtrails and HARP itself. You somewhat answered it in general. I didn't get to focus too much because of preoccupation over here with the mic, but in general, what's your stance on that, on the HARP connection between that, or how we manipulate the weather, such as large storms, like what hurricane was it? Irene, Isaac, one of those that they say they swooped in and made a super storm out of.
And Katrina, yeah, Katrina, even, yeah. Yeah, I heard about that. They seeding storms to create superstorms and whatnot, and I don't know. It's sort of really hard to prove one of those things definitely, especially scientifically, to really determine that, oh, this had that much of an effect, because the climate models are so difficult to model. They're so chaotic. It's hard to say. It's like the butterfly effect. The herd of stampeding antelope could have kicked up a dust storm that caused, like a butterfly landing on this could have caused a deer to sneeze, which caused a stampede to create this dust that went up in the atmosphere that hit the right perfect weather patterns and control to create this superstorm, and just the perfect set of conditions. So it's so hard to say that if any one of those conditions was not met, and then it wouldn't have been the same. And it's hard to say that your contribution in any one of those models, or your input into that model, whether that's contribution was the most significant, or whether you actually had the direct cause and effect relationship. It's very, very difficult to scientifically model that type of thing when you're dealing with very complex, chaotic weather systems. So that's one of the biggest problems with trying to build a definitive case for proof of saying that the earthquake in Haiti, or that Hurricane Katrina was a superstorm that was created by a combination of using chemtrails and HAARP. Basically spraying aerosols into the upper atmosphere to create cloud systems, and then heating that upper atmosphere to increase the energy of the storm. Because when hurricanes go over, it's usually the energy. Hurricanes usually get their energy from moving over warm bodies of water. It's based on ocean temperature and ocean currents, which really aren't heavily monitored in our models. They are to a certain extent, but not as accurately. And they play a very key and essential role in modeling the entire planet's weather, because so much of the heat energy, where the actual energy flow is contained in the latent heat built inside the water, or inside El Nino, or the water, the heavy heavy temperature water currents and stuff like that. So when these hurricanes move over those high temperature water systems, that takes that heat energy out of the water and uses it to feed the storm. So usually they get their energy from those systems. And there's generally a lot more energy in the water to feed a storm than there would be we could supply from HAARP. I don't know what the power output level is on something like that, but I don't know I don't have the exact numbers on how much power how much heat they're actually able to heat up in the atmosphere, and how much they're able to do that locally, or whether they have to heat up the whole atmosphere in different parts, because they're doing it remotely from a station in Alaska. So it's really hard to say. I'm not exactly clear on all the science, and it would be helpful if HAARP and these other things were open source a little, and at least a little more open to the public, so that we could have more scientists and openly looking at the scientific data from these things, to actually see the cause and effect of what happens when they do this. When they turn HAARP on at this frequency and leave it on for that long, what happens? And I don't know. It's the thing is with HAARP, I really think that the military application of HAARP is way more applicable for upper ionospheric weather conditions, where we're in basically creating static storms to interrupt over the horizon communications and different types of communications and signals transmissions. That's the only military advantage I really see from HAARP. It would be cloud seeding and those types of methods are much more effective, though still very chaotic and hard to control, and hard to exactly and hard to do right, and have repeatable processes with them. I think that methodology is probably a lot more effective than ionospheric heating from a remote station in Alaska for weather control. So that's really my whole take on HAARP connection to, the chemtrails and the weather modification. HAARP doesn't really play as essential of a role in really atmospheric weather modification. The weather type of weather that they're talking about is ionospheric. It's a little bit higher up. So I don't think it's at least there doesn't seem to be enough evidence to say that would have as great of an effect as, say, a hurricane moving over a large warm body of ocean water. So.
Well done. Thank you.
All right. Do you have any more questions or any other topics you want me to touch on?
As far as those two, in comparison, or how they may function together, that was very well explained, or well thought out answer. As far as the chemtrail thing, honestly, I don't know where to go with it, because there's not much that I personally can really know what differentiate between fact and what has become conspiracy theory. So, short answer, no.
Yeah, well, conspiracy theory. All right, yeah, I'll end on that because I got 10 minutes left, and I think I could really. The whole idea is say it is a conspiracy. Say they are a bunch of people that have a plot to spray us with whatever. Okay, that's why I put this how and who into it. I added, they have what are they spraying, why are they spraying. I've seen those two things shared around a lot, but really, if you want to prove a conspiracy, you need to ask how and who. That's what I have done with I try to do with 9/11. We've wasted so much time arguing over controlled demolitions, or whether it was a plane or a missile that hit the Pentagon, or holograms or space lasers and all this stuff. And if you look at how and who, that's the only way you're really going to prove a conspiracy. So really track these planes. Go out there and say, all right, well, this is the plane that left this. Take data, collect evidence, and track that plane. Find out where it is. Find a way to get access to past FAA flight records or something. You can probably call up the FAA and ask for logs of what times the planes took off from, and figure out where their flight paths were and everything. Because it's not like they're going to release them for you for the day ahead of time, because you could be using that for terrorist activity. But I'm sure you wouldn't be able to get a month later or 2 months later from the federal government, which works for you, your tax dollars. If you send a request to them asking them for that information, I guarantee you can get it. If you go, just got to find the right offices to do it. So if you start taking data, scientific data, like I said, atmospheric pressure, barometric pressure, humidity, temperature, whether contrails are in the sky or not. Even check different times a day, whether they appear, whether they persist. Take the more detailed the data that you can take, and logs of what every single day. Do a log every day if you're really that passionate about the subject, and take a look in your sky and start taking data and accumulate it. Then you can go back at the times a day and maybe even find if you're getting serious about thinking that these planes are literally spraying, and you're filming them and tracing them where they go, you could potentially find a way to follow all these flights to where they're taking off from and landing from. Then you got how they're doing it, because when they're doing it and who's doing it. So now you can look for who these pilots are, and where these programs are located out of, and get more information on the ground. Because if there's a place that they're running this out of, or I'm just thinking hypothetically here. I'm not saying there is. I'm not saying I advocate. In fact, I think a lot of these, the idea that they're just spraying us all the time to poison us or for these other nefarious reasons is kind of ridiculous. There's not money in that. The thing is, all the conspiracies that I see, the conspiracies that I look for, there's always a funding mechanism. There's always people benefiting or seeking to increase their own profits or their own interests somehow through, let's all get together and form a bank, and we'll print all the nation's money and lend it to them at interest, or when you talk about conspiracies, it's usually about, following funds or money, and where's the money that's going into paying for all these people just to spray all these chemicals into the air and do all that. It's just, I don't see where the money would be at, but anyways, aside from my own personal, that's like my opinion, really. I try to separate opinion from fact as much as possible, so I can be, I try to be analytical about everything that I do, because I don't want to be fooled by, being one of those people that think every contrail that they see is a chemtrail, and that the government's constantly spraying us. But if that is happening, I also don't want to be like, oh well, that's just ridiculous, so I won't even look into it or believe it. But I mean, also, like some of the chemtrail sites, man, you just go to these sites, and there's just, the information is just it's elementary school level, really, some of it. I mean, they have pictures of these roll clouds that appear in this one place in Uruguay, and they say that those are chemtrails. There's a really interesting type of cloud that appears, and I mean, there's just all kinds of pictures of atmospheric weather phenomenon that they should be learning about and stuff. Oh, that's another thing. I did go and get my storm chasing certification. You have to take a basic test from NOAA. Anyone can do this if you go to there's a website right here. I'll post a link up to this. It's called skywarn.org, and it's the National Skywarn homepage. And if you go to training, you can find a local National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Association, NOAA, person in your area that you can inquire about getting certified to become a certified storm spotter and weather system. And they teach you. They have all kinds of educational resources, and you have to you can get trained and certified as a storm spotter and be part of this National Weather Watch sort of foundation. And it's a good introduction to how atmospheric weather works, sort of condensation. And they talk about a lot of how clouds form, how storms form. It's just really interesting. I learned a lot of interesting stuff about storms when I took this class and got my certification. I did it out in Colorado when I lived out there, and went tornado chasing. But that's the story for another day. The Skywarn is basically, you can get certified through NOAA, and I did this a couple of years ago, and learn a lot about weather systems and storms, and it'll help you to start taking data if you really are serious about this, and coming up with accurate information, and then you can get certified as a storm spotter and these classes, and basically learn how weather systems work, and a little bit more about those things. And this is free. It's open to the public. It's all paid for, but with federal funding. So it's which is also interesting if you're looking for a conspiracy, because maybe this is all disinformation that they're all just putting out, right? But anyway, exactly. Right, it's the government. It says federal in front of it. You can't trust. Oh, national. The first word's national. Oh, forget it. Anyways, I don't know. It's hard to say that data is kind of hard to argue with when you have a graph like it says, oh, this is when contrails appear and that's when they don't. Well, you can go out and test that very easily. I'm sure that any scientist can go out and take data of their own and be like, oh, well, there is a correlation between, relative temperature and atmospheric pressure on whether or not I see, and humidity, whether I see contrails or not. That's really interesting. Like you can actually go out and test that with if you collect enough of your own data, which is something I encourage people to do. And it's also important in your data to note where you collected that data and try to collect data, because if we all do this collectively, like all the people that if you took everyone that believed in chemtrails and across the internet and got them all to do this, I mean, if there really was a conspiracy, this would be the best way, because you'd have a collection of all this data, all these. If everyone took an Excel spreadsheet and just sent them all to alien scientists, I could build like a whole website for this and put them all up, and we'll have like a giant database on chemtrails, But I mean, I could do something with that. But as far as it goes now, I really am not. I mean, I viewed when I first heard about it back in like 2005, 2006. I was just like, this is like, I don't know. It's like disinformation, and like. This was a guy, Scott, what's his name? Weatherwars.com, way back in the day. He's the one that started a lot of this. He was on he was a meteorologist on a news station out in Colorado, and started up a lot of this chemtrail stuff way back in the day. And yeah, really interesting history, seeing how I've heard when I first heard about this stuff, and seeing how many people have just like gotten so serious about it. They go out and hold signs and like go to places and like protest like 9/11 truthers used to do, and back in 2005, 2006. I really haven't seen them doing that too much. I'm going to Ground Zero this year, but I mean, it's just, I don't know. It's kind of weird seeing how that movement sort of fell off and it got replaced with these people, saying, being like chemtrails, and I mean, it's like where are our priorities here, people? Like. A 10-year-long war in Iraq based on a lie that your government freaking knew about, and at the very least knew about, if not, actively engaged, and it's just but yet you're worried about planes and whether they may or may not be contrails, or I don't know. Anyways, I don't want to you know, distract or hate on those people too much, because some of them are on my friends lists on Facebook, so they'd probably get mad. But anyways, I don't know. I want to get more debate on this. I might do another show topic on this. But really, it comes down to I don't take a position on it either way. That's not sort of the scientific way to go about things. Can't just say like I know this for sure. I'm open to new data, and I just say, look, we need better information on all this stuff, and there's ways to do it. And I hope you learned about some of them here, and we'll be using them in the future if you want to argue your case more articulately and a more scientific nature. So anyways, that's what the one scientist, just me, I'm just a physicist, my take on this topic of geoengineering, chemtrails, global warming, and all that stuff. So I hope my positions were made clear to everyone, and that you learned something today. So thank you all for watching.